You ever think about how humans love punching things? Like, hey, I've got hands, let's use them for problem solving with violence. That's basically how kickboxing started, but its history is not just punching and kicking. It's wild, global, and somehow involves pirates, samurai, and bare knuckle madness. So you're probably thinking kickboxing came from some modern gym where people throw fancy roundhouse kicks in $200 sneakers. Not even close. The roots of kickboxing? Brutal. We're talking 13th century Thailand, where Muay Boran was the ultimate survival game for soldiers. No gloves, no pads, just pure use every limb you've got and pray you survive energy. Punches, kicks, elbows, knees, and headbutts. Yep, headbutts were totally a thing. These guys did not just fight, they weaponized their entire body. And if you're wondering about how that relates to the kickboxing that you see today, well, imagine the same moves, just with slightly fewer headbutts and more rules to prevent, death. But Muay Boran was not the only wild ancestor of kickboxing. Over in ancient India, they had Musti Yuddha, a martial art that blended yoga level of flexibility with WWE level chaos. Kicks? Check. Elbows? Definitely. Headbutts? Well, of course. Musti Yuddha even influenced modern Muay Thai, which means every kickboxer today is kinda carrying a bit of that ancient Indian flair. You're welcome, history nerds. And while Thailand and India were perfecting the art of beating people up with style, ancient Greece was busy inventing something called pankration, which loosely translates to literally do anything except gouge someone's eyes out. Punches, kicks, grappling, it was basically UFC before Dana White was even a thought in the universe. Brutal? Absolutely. Legal back then? Well, totally. Meanwhile, in 19th century France, sailors were brawling on docks and accidentally inventing savate, a fighting style that let you kick people while wearing fancy boots. Pirates meet ballroom dancing. It somehow worked. And just when you think it can't get crazier, Burmese Lethwei enters the chat. Known as the Art of Nine Limbs, it allows everything Muay Thai does, plus headbutts. No gloves, no dodges. The only way to win is to knock the other guy out. If no one gets KO'd, it's a draw. Imagine fighting for 15 minutes and leaving with nothing but bruises and a story no one believes. Anyway, while these ancient combat styles were laying the groundwork, the real fun starts in the 1960s, when Japan said, hey, let's make this official. And that's where modern kickboxing really takes off, but more on that in a second. The Japanese martial arts scene was dominated by Kyokushin karate, known for its punch through a tree if you have to kind of vibe. These guys were tough, like break ice blocks with your elbow tough. But then someone heard about Muay Thai fighters in Thailand, the dudes who've been kicking each other's chins for centuries. Naturally, Japan thought, let's see whose kicks are deadlier. And boom, 1963, the ultimate karate versus Muay Thai showdown goes down in Bangkok. 3 Kyokushin champions roll into the Lumpini boxing stadium, thinking they're about to teach the Thais a lesson. Yeah, that did not happen. The Muay Thai fighters basically turned it into a live-action Mortal Kombat. 2 of the karate guys barely scraped out wins, possibly through divine luck or the power of his stubbornness. But the third guy KO'd by an elbow. Brutal. Welcome to Thailand, buddy. But here is the twist. Japan did not sulk. No, they hit the drawing board. Enter Tadashi Sawamura, also known as the Demon of Kickboxing, because this man had a 94% knockout rate. Let that sink in. The guy basically walked into every fight thinking, how fast can I end this? And yeah, he usually did. He took what Japan learned from that Thailand beatdown and combined it with their karate roots to create a terrifyingly efficient knockout machine. Modern Japanese kickboxing? Yeah, you can pretty much thank Sawamura for that. So with karate licking its wounds from the Muay Thai showdown, Japan said, let's rebuild. Enter Osamu Noguchi, a boxing promoter who thought, why not mix karate's flashy speed with Muay Thai's I'm going to break you brutality. Alongside Tatsu Yamada, a karate master tired of just breaking boards, they whipped out what we now call kickboxing. Original name, right? But hey, it stuck. 1966, Osaka. The first ever professional kickboxing event happened, and let's just say it was wild. Rules kind of optional at this point. Fighters were throwing punches, kicks, headbutts, and even tossing each other around like it was a medieval tavern brawl. If you're wondering how modern kickboxing evolved from this chaos, well, same. Back then it was more about seeing who could stay conscious the longest than adhering to any sort of structure. But people loved it. Fast forward to the 1970s and Japan turned kickboxing into a full-on cultural phenomenon. TV networks were broadcasting matches, fighters were becoming celebrities, and crowds could not get enough of the action. Think MMA but with an added layer of what the hell did I just watch? And then came Toshio Fujiwara, the guy who put Japan on the global kickboxing map. Not only was he a superstar at home, but he also marched into Thailand, Muay Thai's backyard, and became the first non-Thai fighter to win a Muay Thai title. That's like someone walking into the NBA and dunking on LeBron in their first game. Meanwhile, the rules started evolving as well. Headbutts and throws? Gone. Why? Probably because they realized nobody wanted their face smashed in that much. These changes streamlined kickboxing into the fast-paced, adrenaline-filled sport that we recognize today. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, the United States was watching all this unfold and thinking, yeah, we want in as well. But of course, America did what it always does. They put their own spin on it. So America sees Japan's kickboxing craze and thinks we can do that, just, you know, with more drama. Enter Joe Louis, a karate champ who got bored of karate's tag you're it fighting style. No one wanted to lightly tap their opponent and wait for a judge to nod approvingly. Nope, Joe wanted something more violent. So what did he do? He linked up with Bruce freaking Lee, the ultimate martial arts innovator. Together, they cooked up full contact karate, which was basically like karate but with fewer rules and a lot more punching people in the face. 1970, the first ever US kickboxing match happens. Gloves on, punches flying, finally something real. No refs stopping the action every 3 seconds to count points, just raw, full contact chaos. Exactly what Joe wanted. But it was a little too wild. So in 1974, the Professional Karate Association, PKA, came along and said, okay, let's make this a proper sport. They brought in rules, made gloves mandatory, and banned low kicks. Why no low kicks? Apparently smashing your opponent's legs was just a little too extreme for American audiences. Lame, but whatever. And then things got weirdly mainstream. It's the 80s and suddenly kickboxing is everywhere. Chuck Norris became a national treasure, roundhouse kicking everything in sight. Jean-Claude Van Damme showed up doing the splits in movies like Kickboxer, and gyms across America were filled with people who genuinely believed they were one training montage away from becoming world champions. But as America soaked up the spotlight, across the Atlantic, Dutch kickboxing was quietly cooking up something deadly. And trust me, they were not here to play nice. Seriously, if you've ever wondered why modern kickboxers seem to chop their opponents down like lumberjacks, blame the Netherlands. It all started in the 1970s when Dutch fighters decided to take the best parts of Japanese kickboxing, throw in some Kyokushin karate, and top it off with a heavy dose of Muay Thai brutality. The result? A low-kicking, high-pressure style that did not just hit hard, it hit everywhere. Oh, you thought shin pads would save you? Cute. Let's talk about Raymond Dekkers, aka The Diamond. A guy who basically went to Thailand, looked their legendary fighters in the eye and said, yeah, I can do that better. Spoiler, he could. Dekkers was not just beating Thai fighters, he was embarrassing them in their own stadiums. Imagine being so good you make a country rethink its own national sport. And Dutch training culture? Absolute chaos. If sparring in most gyms is like a friendly handshake, sparring in Dutch gyms is a full-on street fight. Fighters like Ernesto Hoost, 4-time K1 champ, and Alistair Overeem, who's somehow scarier in real life than in video games, were forged in these fire pits. But here is the kicker. The Dutch did not just copy Muay Thai, they evolved it, making it faster, stronger, and somehow even more painful to watch. Those low kicks, they became the signature move that made fighters crumble mid-match. So just when you thought kickboxing had carved out its space with the Dutch low kick invasion, Japan decided to turn up the heat. If kickboxing was already a wild martial arts experiment, K1 in the 1990s took that experiment, strapped it to a rocket, and shot it into the stratosphere. Think karate meets Muay Thai meets Hollywood Lights, all wrapped up in a high-energy winner-takes-all tournament format. Founded in 1993 by Japanese promoter Kazuyoshi Ishii, K1 became the ultimate mashup event for martial artists worldwide. You had karatekas, Muay Thai warriors, boxers, and basically anyone brave enough to throw down under its hybrid rules. And the best part, it worked. It was fast-paced, unpredictable, and more intense than a caffeine-fueled Friday night. Then came the legends, Peter Wurtz, also known as the Lumberjack, chopping his way through opponents with devastating high kicks. Andy Hug, a karate master with kicks so slick you would think he rehearsed them in a dojo run by Michael Jackson. And of course, Sammy Schilt, all 6'11" of him, casually towering over everyone like an unbeatable video game boss. So just when you thought kickboxing was ruling the combat sports world, another wildcard entered the chat. MMA. It was the late 90s, and while K1 was still riding high, the UFC was quietly brewing something brutal in its backyard. An all-out martial arts mashup with practically no rules. Naturally, kickboxers took one look at this chaotic free-for-all and thought, yeah, we can dominate this. Enter Mirko Cro Cop, a K1 legend with legs so lethal they needed a warning label. His left high kick was not just a move, it was a death sentence. The man practically wrote the rulebook on head kick knockouts, turning highlight reels into his personal playground. His mantra, right leg, hospital, left leg, symmetry. I mean, if that's not badass, what is? And it wasn't just Cro Cop. Alistair Overeem, the man built like a comic book villain, brought his K1 striking into the octagon and started flattening people. His knees? Terrifying. His clinch game? Like getting hugged by a hydraulic press. Kickboxers were turning MMA into a striking clinic, while MMA fighters scrambled to upgrade their own stand-up game before they got sent into the orbit by a high kick. This was the cross-pollination era. Kickboxers were not just kickboxers anymore, they were learning jiu-jitsu and wrestling. Meanwhile, MMA stars were practically living in kickboxing gyms, desperate to level up their striking before their next fight. So while MMA was stealing headlines and turning fighters into overnight celebrities, kickboxing was brewing its comeback. And it came back big. Enter Glory Kickboxing, founded in 2012 with one goal: take over the world. Imagine K1's wild energy, but with more polish, bigger production, and an international roster of absolute killers. At the center of it all, Rico Verhoeven, aka the king of kickboxing. This dude is built like a Marvel superhero and fights like he has rent due tomorrow. Rico's reign was not just dominance, it was unreal. He mowed through the heavyweight division like it was a cardio warm-up, cementing himself as the face of modern kickboxing. And then there was Badr Hari, the bad boy of kickboxing with more drama than a Netflix series. Love him or hate him, his fights were absolute chaos, with every punch thrown like it was personal. Put Rico and Badr in the same ring, well, you've got must-watch madness, and Glory knew it. They turned that rivalry into primetime magic, filling arenas and lighting up the internet with knockout highlights that left jaws on the floor. And just when you thought kickboxing could not get more mainstream, boom, it crashes headfirst into the fitness world. Suddenly, it was not just for fighters anymore, it was for moms, CEOs, and anyone who wanted to punch their stress away without the risk of a black eye. You're probably thinking, how did a combat sport turn into my Gym's Tuesdays night cardio class? Simple. Kickboxing is crazy effective. By the late 2000s, gyms everywhere were swapping Zumba for cardio kickboxing, promising full-body workouts that left you drenched in sweat and feeling like an action star. No gloves, no opponents, just you versus your imaginary rival who probably cut you off in traffic earlier. Celebrities jumped on the hype train. Halle Berry, Gigi Hadid, and a whole lineup of beautiful people suddenly swore kickboxing was their secret to staying red carpet ready. And honestly, can you blame them? Punching air to techno remixes feels kind of empowering. Olympics? Maybe. There's been a serious push to get kickboxing into the games. And honestly, it is about time. With the new talent exploding from Africa and South America, kickboxing's global reach is bigger than ever. We're talking fighters from countries you've never associated with combat sports, showing up and stealing the spotlight. So where does that leave us? Well, one thing's clear, kickboxing's story is not over. Whether it's ruling the next fitness craze, taking over the Olympics, or giving us the next viral knockout, the future is looking pretty damn exciting. And who knows, maybe it's your turn to lace up the gloves and become part of that wild story.